Today, Nationers, we're going to be diving deep into the real reason Drake is suing Kendrick Lamar. And it's not quite exactly what you think, and I'm going to explain why. Nationers, I hope you guys are doing well. Welcome back to another episode of The Realest Podcast, episode 68. Banner is right behind me. I hope you guys are doing swell on this fine Sunday. Whenever you guys are watching this, hopefully it is a Sunday. Maybe it's the day that this podcast drops. Maybe it's the day after. Regardless, Nation, I hope you're having a wonderful day. Nationers, this last Thursday was Thanksgiving. We just had kind of like a big holiday here in the United States, of course. Obviously, a lot of turkeys eaten, a lot of macaroni, mashed potatoes. If you guys obviously follow the podcast, we posted a big three, which is basically like we asked me and Jeanty, my girlfriend, we'll ask each other, like, what is like the big three, you know? And usually it's our big three, you know, it's not necessarily like America's big three, because like, what about if somebody put like stuffing in there? You know, I know for her, she put cornbread in there, and I know maybe not everyone's like a cornbread fan, but everyone's definitely like a mashed potatoes and a gravy fan for sure. And then also on top of that, mac and cheese. I feel like a lot of people like mac and cheese. One weird thing that I saw like the the Oklahoma City Thunder. They had like, they had asked their players, like, what's your like ideal Thanksgiving meal? And some people said like oxtail. I've never had oxtail. If you guys have had oxtail, or if there's like an odd, like a super odd, you know, like somebody's making like a bull's penis stew. I don't know. Like, is there an odd Thanksgiving side that like your family member brings? You're like, oh God. I know we had like cranberry sauce, and that's kind of typical. We've had like green bean casseroles before. I really like olives. I like corn, but those are all pretty standard. We don't have anything that's like too out of the way, you know? So with that said, Nationers, happy Thanksgiving. I know this is post-Thanksgiving, but I hope you guys had a great one. Hopefully you guys had some great meals. Hopefully you got to spend some time with some loved ones, maybe see some family members that maybe you haven't seen in a few years, or obviously haven't seen in a super long time. Nationers, again, episode 68, we have some pretty dicey things to talk about. There have been a revelation in the Kendrick Drake beef. There is brand new albums, brand new songs coming out. There's brand new papers, lawsuits, different things that are kind of in the works, but Nationers, before we kind of get into that, one of the main things that I want to talk about, my foot is doing fine. I'm out of the boot as of right now for recording this podcast, because if I'm in like this boot that I have, it's like 2 inches of height. Like my knees are almost up to the bottom of this table, and it's very awkward. And it kind of made me think of like, how do people that are like super tall, you know, like I understand it's probably a struggle to fit in cars. It's a struggle to fit in airplanes, you know. I don't know how people do it. Like, I don't know how people of 6 foot and taller do it. I really don't. Like, I'm super annoyed by like 2 inches of my height in just my like legs, mainly my calf, of course, but the lower part of my legs just being like up. You know, it's like, it feels weird. Like, it feels like I'm having to lean back a little bit too much. And so I don't know how you guys do it. If any of you guys have obviously leg issue problems without like proper like solutions, you know, like if you're just sitting at like a table and like the table happens to be super tiny and you're like, okay, well this room's like 1.5 feet. I don't know how I eat. It's going to be uncomfortable. It's going to be cramped. Your leg's going to be out wide. How do you guys do it? How do you guys do it? You know, what are the solutions you guys have? Is there a solution? You know, I know a lot of people have heard, I know a lot of people have done, you know, the gain some height, you like extend the femur and then like the bone fuses back together. I don't know. I wouldn't want that. I wouldn't want my legs to be any longer than they are. They're already long enough. Anywho, Nationers, welcome back into another episode. Today, Nationers, we're going to be diving deep into the real reason Drake is suing Kendrick Lamar. And it's not quite exactly what you think, and I'm going to explain why. As you guys may know, throughout this entire year, there have been massive features, massive albums coming out in the world of hip hop. We've had Schoolboy Q's Blue Lips. We've had Doechie's album. We've had Tyler, the Creator's album come in the back half of this year. We've had, obviously, the Metro Boomin Future albums kind of drop. We've even had Vultures 1 and 2 drop this year. And one of the major things that came out of this hip-hop galore of 2024 was the Kendrick Lamar versus Drake beef. And I bring this up because there was some recent things that came out about Drake filing a lawsuit about Kendrick Lamar. And I say about for one reason. So one main thing that came out of this rap beef was just diss after diss. We obviously heard Kendrick Lamar's the feature that he had on Like That came out on Future and Metro Boomin's album, We Don't Trust You. And what basically ended up happening from that verse was that there was this, it ignited this rap beef. I know last year in October when For All the Dogs came out, J. Cole and Drake, they both hopped on a track and they were both spitting about how they're a part of this big three. And, Kendrick Lamar was a part of J. Cole's big three, whereas obviously Drake didn't really mention that, but he said that J. Cole and him were a part of the big three. Most any rap fans, hip hop fans would conclude that those three are usually generally the big three of this era. Now, not to say that they're the big three of all time. And this kind of leads me to this main dilemma. After Kendrick dropped his verse, the world was a frenzy. How is Drake going to respond? How is J. Cole going to respond? I know J. Cole's maybe working on some stuff, but how are these two other people going to respond to this? Saying that, there's no big three, it's just big me. That's a pretty bold statement to, not really include anyone else. Now, one of the major things that came with this beef was this array of diss tracks. And we've covered this on the podcast before in prior episodes. We've had Jack sit down and we've talked about what our thoughts were on these songs. Now, looking back, I don't think I was entirely correct in a lot of my, not predictions, but mainly just what does this rap beef mean in the grand scheme of things? And so there's one major thing that Drake is doing right now that might shake up the industry in a way that he is used to garner his own success. He has played this hand and now he's making sure that nobody else can play his hand, but mainly at the expense of Kendrick Lamar. And I say Kendrick Lamar because that's obviously the main proprietor in this rap beef. It's Drake versus Kendrick Lamar, and J. Cole's in a field or on a beach just listening to hits in wired headphones. And so that's what it seems like on the surface. But Drake is not going after Kendrick Lamar. As of right now, and a lot of the headlines will say that Drake is suing Kendrick Lamar or he's threatening legal action against Kendrick Lamar. That's probably a more proper term because he's not directly suing Kendrick Lamar. One of the main things that came out of this rap beef was we had Like That. We had Drake's response and push-ups. We obviously had J. Cole kind of chime in and then kind of bow out a few days later. And then after that, we had Euphoria. After that, we had 616 in LA. We had Family Matters. We had Meet the Grams. Then we had, what is it? I don't know what order it was. It was either Heart Part 6 or, no, it was probably Not Like Us because, yeah, it would have been that and then Not Like Us a day and a half later. So it was Not Like Us and then the Heart Part 6. And that kind of concluded a lot of this actual song release. And when Not Like That, no, or Not Like Us, came out, there was this sense of, wow, like, this is the kill shot. There's not just like a single bar. There's not just like in that song, there definitely is a single bar that is very catchy, A minor, of course, we all know the line. But the biggest thing about it is this song was like the finishing final coffin. The momentum had swung all the way to Kendrick. And, obviously a lot of people were living on this high. And when Drake released the Heart Part 6, not in the format that Kendrick does it because he does the Heart PT.6, whereas Drake spelt the whole part out. He was like PART, which is not formally how Kendrick does it. Now, let me just make sure that I'm correct in this because I know Drake did the part. I'm going to go at least the heart, and I'm sure I could probably find this. Okay, technically not wrong. So at least in Kendrick Lamar's last part, he did 5. Well, I take that back because I'm actually wrong in this. Kendrick Lamar just dropped a new album, and he had PT.6. He had Heart Part 6. He didn't have The Heart Part 6, but it was the 6th edition of his Heart series. And so again, the momentum had swung all the way over to Kendrick's side. The Heart Part 6 comes out. Drake is talking about how, his Kendrick had got molested. That's not what the song that he was, Mother I was talking about, Mother I Sober. It was talking about how his mother had got molested and how her trauma kind of became his trauma, and, how he had to deal with not only her grief, but that grief became a part of his life, if you get what I mean. And for somebody like Drake, if you're going to not only talk about molestation, you're going to talk about the wrong person. But if you're going to try and swing the momentum your way, you got to make sure you got everything right. And Drake missed the ball on this. The Heart Part 6 not only was the worst, maybe formal diss track that actually came out, because like Tailor Made wasn't like an official song that really came out. It came out, but it wasn't like on streaming services for people to play. Now people have put it on there, but that's besides the point. Drake didn't release it himself on any distributing streaming platforms. So all this to say is that the momentum is here. Kendrick Lamar has all the momentum after Not Like Us, and even more now that the Heart Part 6 came out. Drake missed the ball. And so we kind of just saw in the aftermath of Not Like Us this entire summer of, once the music video was released, it was just this culture fest of the West Coast, LA, the restoration of hip hop. And I know Kendrick Lamar, especially after listening to this album that he had put out called GNX, we've been waiting months for this long anticipated album roll. And now I thought he was going to release it on Aubrey Graham's birthday, which is Drake, which would have been October 24th, which didn't exactly land on a Friday, but we know Kendrick at this point. It doesn't really matter the day. Doesn't matter that it's a Friday, but, especially with streaming services, you wouldn't want to release it before Friday. Streaming services go from Friday to Friday, whereas formerly they used to go to Tuesday to Tuesday. And what basically happened with this Friday to Friday thing is that it is kind of important that you release music on a Friday. That is an album, of course. Songs, not so much. It's just one-offs. It doesn't really exactly matter in that sense. So I say this to say, after this immaculate summer of Not Like Us, people bumping it all across the United States, the radio's playing it, of course, maybe even the world is playing it. People are there to kind of see Drake's downfall, right? People are there to see the aftermath of this beef. Now, for myself, it's hard to look at Drake, in this light of like, oh, he's like, let me just put it this way. It's hard to listen to Drake not thinking about like the things that were said in these songs, the things that maybe his vacations to Turks and Caicos, there was a song that he came out, the features that he's done, Wagwan Delilah, like how you go from the Heart Part 6 to Wagwan Delilah, like how do you get worse than that, you know what I mean? And so obviously there's this muck of this perception in a way that people have kind of put over Drake, myself included. It's just hard not to think about like maybe, yeah, it just doesn't, like I don't really support gambling in a sense. And so when I see a bunch of streamers sponsored by Stake, I'm like, brother, just like, I get it. They're getting their money. In the grand scheme of things, their lives really aren't affected. But what they do affects so many others. And Drake is one of those people, and I kind of include a lot of streamers that maybe gamble and a lot of streamers that maybe don't really have so much morality at the forefront. They game the system. They gimmick what is best in their own intention. They try and get as much followers, subscribers, money as they can, because in 10 to 20 years, it doesn't really matter. They're just trying to make financial success in the long term. Maybe they're having fun during it, of course. But the other side of the coin, and what I would refer to the Kendrick side of the coin, so we have Drake, maybe the gimmicky kind of way of doing it, only benefits himself. We have Kendrick, who, is not a savior. He says this in Big Steppers and whatnot, Mr. Morale and the Big Steppers. He says that he's not your savior. And I don't think anyone should look as an artist as their savior. He's not there to save rap, but there is an ideology behind trying to restore rap. Now, I know for myself, I'm a big track guy. Michael Johnson is a very talented and prolific athlete in the sport of track. He recently just dropped and is creating this league called the Grand Slam League. And it's only specifically for track. There is no field. And there was two Olympians that came out, Tara Davis, who you guys may know, and Hunter Woodall. They both came out kind of criticizing Michael for trying to be the savior of track. And it's his own words. He's trying to save track. Does track need a savior? Obviously, we just watched one of the craziest 100 finishes in Olympic history yet of all time on that given stage, of course. Does track really need a savior? That's up for debate. But maybe unveiling the curtain shows you how much better track could be. Now, I remember this old Little Dicky song called Professional Rapper, and him and Snoop Dogg's featured on it. He talks about how, but it's already working. And Little Dicky asks, but what about if it could be working better? You never know until you try. Could be worse, could be better. Obviously, we're going to kind of learn, and we already know what is working. So how do we use that to our advantage and move forward with that? Now, I kind of bring this up because Drake has dropped a lot of albums post-COVID, that 2020, that is. Not to say that COVID was like specifically 2020, but he's released a lot of albums. And these albums are filled. These aren't albums with like 12 songs. They're not albums with 14 songs. A lot of these albums are pretty dense songs. They're 16, 17, 18 even. I believe Certified Lover Boy is like an 18-song track list. Not Certified Lover, For All the Dogs. It's a pretty extensive track list. And so what I mean by this savior that Kendrick maybe imposes is that he's not the savior to hip-hop. He's the restoration of what has become before them. In the world that we live in, where this fast food type of music of, I'm going to listen to this album, there's going to be a few songs that I keep in my rotation, but I couldn't tell you 10 to 11 of the song titles that are on it, unless I like them or I'm a fan of that particular artist. And not to say that every single artist is in that vein. I feel like a lot of artists do a lot of things very differently. Lil Uzi just dropped an album. It was pretty okay. It didn't feel like it was this magnificent album where I can connect with it. And so one of the main things that Kendrick has done throughout this year and through this rap beef is kind of, again, this perception of Drake that what he does isn't the guy that you should really look up to. And he's not saying that himself should be either. He's just the guy to take the guy down, if you know what I mean. And so what I mean by all of this and bringing up this savior aspect, this Drake coin, this Kendrick coin, of course, it's not crypto, of course, but what I mean by it is that there is an old way of doing hip hop. Hip hop is supposed to be an art form for a lot of African Americans, black people in America, of course. Not every black person is African American in that sense, but if you get what I mean, that it's an art form created by black people and African Americans alike. And so Kendrick Lamar is trying to restore the old ways of hip hop, albums that we can connect with, a song that obviously still has hit plays like Not Like Us, TV Off, these songs that, maybe you can still connect with in a grander scheme, but it's just not this mumbly jumbly, oh my goodness, I like this one, maybe two, maybe three songs from this album, but I'm I don't really know. I don't know the rest of the songs. And so what I'm trying to say is that this lawsuit, and I'm going to quote this lawsuit that Drake is imposing, is that Kendrick Lamar has done unbelievable defamation on Drake's name. He tried to minimize what Drake is as a brand, as a person, the gimmicks that he's doing. And I'll mention one in a sec, because this gimmick that he plays with this fast food music, of course, of just releasing an album every 6 to 7 months that maybe has hit features, it's lost the art form. Yeah, a lot of these songs have really good beats. A lot of these songs have really good features that you're excited to work on. Like J. Cole, Drake, fantastic. I'll listen. A lot of people still listen to that song. That's great. It's a hype song. It obviously has a kind of a fun little meaning behind it. Not every song has to have a meaning. And not every artist has to be like as deep as possible. But for Kendrick, who feels like he has to live up to this West Coast name, Tupac, and, you know, the people that have came before him, the people around him that have supported him, you know, especially in the Heart Part 6, when he talks about how Black Hippie didn't work because of him, because his creative direction was so different. Could he have made it work? Maybe. But that's not the point of the message. And has there ever been a Drake song? And I'm just going to pose this question. Maybe there's a Drake song back in the day. A lot of people really like old Drake. But when you find a way that not necessarily exploits, but exploits the listeners, the eyes, the media, why would you not continue that? Drake found a way that obviously worked, and he continued to make it work. And it's all about making sure that that works as efficiently as possible. Stuffing an album with 15 plus songs that 2 of them are going to be major hits. Maybe there's going to be of course, a music video like Way Too Sexy that kind of is funny because Kawhi Leonard's in it and he looks like he's a robot. And it's just going to be the buzz. And then 6 months later, 7 months later, you rinse and repeat. And I bring up that Lil Uzi album because Lil Uzi had a great run in 2017. Since then, every single album has been the same concept. Not just from a lyrical standpoint, but it's the same sound. It's the same type of lyrics. Galaxy gas, as some might say. And obviously there's artists alike that are going to kind of like, you know, continue to know what works, and they're going to continue to find the old success that they may have had. But for Kendrick and a lot of people in hip hop that maybe are coming up, like Tyler, the Creator, just dropped a magnificent album that sounds so different from what he's done before. You know, there's kind of like this HBCU vibe and Sticky, you know, St. Chroma, and this whole motif of the entire album of finding his light. He doesn't really want to settle down with one person, but he knows it's for the best of him. And as we kind of go through the album, you kind of experience the light that maybe had dimmed, and he's kind of losing his way, but he also knows what's good for him, and there's a light at the end of the tunnel, but he's stuck in this tunnel, and it doesn't feel like any progress he makes is getting closer to the light that is Chromacopia. Of course, a utopia and utopia is this magnificent, perfectly world-building place, the perfect isolation for people, whereas Chroma is lights. Chromatic lights. That's why the album cover is so darkly dense. It has a steampunk vibe, you know, and he has this mask that he's trying to take off because he's trying to take his mask off. He's trying to find his Chromacopia. It makes you think. And so when I say, has there ever been a Drake album in recent time that you've just like dug deep into the lyrics? Yeah, I'm sure there's subliminal disses towards this or that person, or like, oh, maybe he's talking about this. And, you know, by any means that Drake is really talented in his ways of trying to come up with like a somewhat of a picture, and maybe the way that he kind of confronts something is so like, you know, he kind of jumps around this puzzle in a way. He's like playing Chutes and Ladders. But it's nothing deep. It's a paper cut of lyricism. And it doesn't help that Drake in the past has used ghostwriters. It's completely diminished his perception. You know, like unless Drake is sitting there and we see the entirety of him writing these, and, you know, maybe the few people that obviously help with lyrics, help with the beat. Yeah, there's going to be multiple writers on a song. Not every single person that is credited is writing lyrics, but there's going to be people that write the song. There's going to be people that maybe helped. What about if you type like PT dot instead of part? They get a song credit. That's just how that works. So obviously the less amount of people you have on that, the better. And if you obviously have consistent people like Kendrick has with Soundwave producing his songs, Jack Athoff, somebody that produces for Taylor Swift. You obviously have Mustard, who is featured a lot on this album in ways that are, you know, Mustard, you know, screaming into the mic. when you listen to an album like Kendrick's, it makes you think. It questions your morality. It questions your way of living. And yeah, we can go drive down to the store and I'm like, I'm hungry. I'm willing to spend $10 on fast food. The analogy that I want you to see is that Drake has this perception of ghost writers. He has other people writing for him. He's kind of like this rap playboy in a way where, he's talking about these girls that he's, had sexual relationships with. I mean, for Christ's sake, he had a kid with a porn star. And not to say that it's anything bad, but it was probably just a few nights, maybe less, maybe a bit more. It obviously became a little bit more. It doesn't feel like maybe he wanted that. And it just so happens because obviously it got revealed by Pusha T back in 2018. Whereas on the other side of the coin, where Kendrick has obviously, called out Drake for this, gambling addictions, drug problems, he's talking about how, his parties with very young to maybe even underage women has kind of influenced his life in a way that he's kind of found this playboy lifestyle. He raps about this munchy, crunchy, fast food type of diet. And he's just going to release this bloated album that, again, has a few hits and everything else you're going to forget forever. There's a few songs that I like on Certified Lover Boy. There's maybe 2 songs that I like off Honestly Nevermind. There's maybe a few songs, I would say 2 songs for all the dogs, 8 a.m. in Charlotte, and First Person Shooter. This new Kendrick album, and again, this is recency bias. Squabble Up, great song. I'd probably continue to listen to that. The Heart Part 6, continue to listen to that. TV Off is nonstop in my ears every single time that I'm on working. Beyond that, you have whacked out murals that just continuously, it's this weird black Air Forces. Yeah, I think that's the term. Black Air Force energy that he kind of has. You have Reincarnated, which, my goodness, if that's a song to make you think about life, that is a song to make you rethink everything in your life in more ways than I can even imagine. And again, that goes for every single person out there. And so in the midst of this beef, I revisited Mother I Sober. It obviously made people go back to the latest Kendrick album at the time of Mother I Sober, or Auntie Diaries, like him trying to understand that his uncle is, or his auntie is a man now, that he's a transgender aunt now uncle. It's a weird concept to think about 20, 30 plus years ago. And it's, especially as a kid, imagine my sister, I had kids and they're maybe 4 or 5 years old and, my sister becomes a man now. What? How does that, what? That's a concept, and how that shaped him as a person and trying to come to terms with that. Everyone's always had some type of way, a friend, maybe that identified and maybe not the traditional normal sense that a lot of people think of in this world. And I bring this entire album up because it makes you think. Are what people wear and what they do, is it just because the mask that they have on and they're trying to uphold it? People renting cars so that they can keep up with their lifestyle with N95? Take off the foo-foo, take off the clout chase, take off the Wi-Fi. Who are you as a person? And so I wanted to bring up this history of Drake and Kendrick Lamar, because with the release of Not Like Us, it was a massive hit. It was the fastest streaming song to basically every single milestone that it could have been. Maybe other than the first few millions, of course, but 50 million, 100 million, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. It's going to be the fastest. It's Cristiano Ronaldo as a YouTube channel, but as a song. Okay? Does that make sense? And I bring this entire thing up because I want to put the whole landscape into focus. When he calls him a pedophile, trying to strike a chord, and it's probably A minor. It's a play on words, trying to strike a chord, but also trying to hit up or trying to, fantasize about this sexual relationship with somebody that is underage. In Drake, that is. And so I want to lay this table out for every single person out there that maybe didn't know this whole, history that has come and how we got here. When Michael Jackson came on as apparently a ghost feature on Drake's album, I thought it was a great song, but it didn't need to happen. It was exploitative of Michael Jackson's legacy, and it just so happens that the estate actually signed off on it. And when Drake buys, these Pharrell Williams chains and Tupac's ring, is he, again, like Kendrick said, is he a culture vulture and somebody that is a colonizer of what true hip hop and rap is? Or is he actually seriously a fan of it? And he actually is somebody that lives the lifestyle. For the love of God, Drake is somebody that obviously maybe didn't live the traditional hood life. He maybe lived in a somewhat okay place in life. He was an actor on Degrassi. He obviously had some beef with that, so he turned to rapping. And, Drake obviously has kind of changed his appearance over the years. He kind of went from this pretty boy, kind of fun vibes to this smug look that kind of almost feels like a little bit of a mob boss and a gangster, and he got a face tattoo. And is he living the rapper lifestyle, or is he a rapper at heart? And maybe both are true. But Kendrick Lamar, over the course of Not Like Us and all the other songs, he's questioned the reality that is at play. And the reality at play for Drake right now is that he has filed a petition. Yes, a petition, not a lawsuit against Kendrick Lamar, but he has filed a petition against UMG. Now, for those that don't know, Drake is signed to a record label called Republic Records. Kendrick Lamar, on the other side, is signed to a record called Interscope Records. Now, he obviously is somewhat of a independent artist. He's just under a different label because it's not TDE, Top Dog Entertainment. He's PG Lang. This is a different way. Oklahoma, this whole way of revolutionizing and restoring hip-hop. So, with this petition, why it's not a lawsuit is because Drake doesn't really have enough evidence at this current moment in time. He may have heard a whisper, kind of like a whistleblower in a way. He might have had somebody at Spotify, which is a part of this petition, because with the song Not Like Us, it obviously calls out Drake for being a pedophile, a predator, a creep, somebody that doesn't really have a good light in a lot of people's eyes. And whether true or not, it is, somebody can have these really pedophilic ways, but are they a pedophile, right? They haven't done anything, but maybe they have this weird fantasy towards Millie Bobby Brown and text him hey, I'm here for you if anything. It's weird. It's just this weird situation that is. And so with the painting of Not Like Us on Drake, obviously, now that the album is out, after we got When the Party Dies. No, that's a Billie Eilish song. The Party Dies, the song that Kendrick Lamar dropped on Twitter and Instagram, and you obviously had that. Wasn't a big enough time for Drake to really file this petition. But then you had the album. Everyone knew that Kendrick was going to drop an album. And so Drake is trying to get that pendulum a little bit more his way, because both of these records are signed to UMG. They're both owned by UMG, Universal Music Group. Now, if you're a YouTuber, you probably had something of the sorts, especially if you listen to music. Oh, UMG claimed this song. You can't really monetize it, or it's blocked in Belarus and Russia. We talked about this last episode. But one of the biggest things is that Drake is in contract negotiations with UMG. And it just so happens that this timeline of contract negotiations lines up pretty parallel with the beef. Now, it's not a one-to-one. Obviously, his contract negotiation is still happening. The beef is kind of settled down after post-summer. But UMG may have paid radio stations, payola. Not to say that radio stations are payola. The illegal distribution or paying of streams on radios is called payola. Throwing garbage on the street is called littering. Walking across the street without a light or a controlled situation is called jaywalking. Doing that, paying for streams or distributing of a song and being hey, we'll pay you this much money under the table if you play this song, is called payola. So that's why I say that. So he's accusing UMG and Spotify, particularly, for botting streams on Spotify, that is. So the song looks massively better than it may have done. Now, with the body and with the payola, this obviously doesn't really look good as a whole if true. But there's another side of the coin, because with this contract negotiation, Drake is kind of coming up with this petition because UMG might not want to pay the money that Drake is asking for. And so one way to do that is to make him look bad. And if you're getting called a pedophile on the internet and a lot of people believe it, even if it might not be 100% true, it's going to make you look bad to the public eye. And the public perception of you will be diminished for a short period of time, and is obviously going to take a hit as a whole. So he's claiming that UMG favorited and boosted the song to make it look better for Kendrick so that they don't have to pay Drake as much money for whatever negotiation he's trying to sign on. And this is super crucial because, as I said earlier, the gimmicky way that is trying to be at the top of your industry, like rap, like pop, is to exploit every single avenue as possible. And now Drake has 4 of the top 5 most streamed albums within, I think, the first week or so. Maybe a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I'm not entirely too sure. I think it's the first week. So it's a Carter 5 and like Scorpion. Yeah, For All the Dogs. You have Honestly Nevermind and Certified Lover Boy. Not in that order, but I know Carter 5 is number 5. I know Scorpion and Certified Lover Boy are number 1 and 2. Or maybe For All the Dogs. Whatever. All that to say is that the exact same way that Drake has maybe used the top in this exploitative way is the exact same gimmick in the card that I mentioned that he's trying to make sure that nobody else uses. The reason why independent streamers and everyone's always like signed to a label for an artist that I just went to a concert earlier this year was Russ. He's an independent artist. He was signed to Columbia Records. He got $1 million or split 50% when he was signed, and then sold his catalog for $50 million, I believe, too. And so independent artists obviously are paying everything out of pocket. Right? That's just how that works. They're not signed to a label. And so what basically happens is that they're going to set enough money aside for this artist. You're going to have music for the music video. You're going to have music for the album. You're going to have music for, advertisements. Now, the difference between advertisements and paying for radio is that radio, apparently you can't do that. There's something legally that makes you, so you can't do that. Now, obviously, if the song is a hit, who stops the radio from playing it? Lizzo's Truth Hurts was one of the most played radio hits of all time. Had 13,000 radio plays in a day. I think it was Truth Hurts. It's one of Lizzo's best songs. So who's stopping this? Is it money? Is it just the law? What Drake is claiming is that there is information out there in this petition that he's trying to set forth, which hasn't formally been stamped by him and his crew, is that he's asking the courts to release that information so he knows who to sue. Did Kendrick Lamar conspire to pay every single radio station in the Northern Hemisphere or North America to play this song? Is it UMG that did that? Is there even any evidence for that? He's trying to sign this petition, and I don't exactly know how this works, but it makes him look like a sore loser. Makes him look like, oh my goodness, I lost a rap beef. Yeah, maybe he's taking eyes from the album, but nobody believes you. And here's the reason why I don't think Drake is right. Drake is wrong for one reason. This song was a massive hit. Yeah, and mind you, somebody could have paid $10 billion to make this the biggest song ever. And it very well could have been true. And the reason I don't believe that it is that Kendrick Lamar not only dropped an album, it is one of the, if not the highest grossing streams / units sold for an album with less than 12 songs. Less than 12 or less songs. That is nuts. The highest units sold for an album with 12 or less songs. Now again, let's say every single song had 30 million listens. Every single song. Let's just say in the first week, every single song had 30 million listens. So you have 15. That's 450,000 million, that is. unit streams. It's not necessarily the unit sold, but I'm just going to say streams. It's a lot. That's 450 million streams if there's 15 songs on the album. You take away 3 of those. You see what I'm getting at. Now, obviously, some songs are going to be a little higher. Some songs are going to be a little lower. What's that conversion? 360? Yeah, 360 million. Kendrick was at 350,000 units sold, which is pretty on par for what that is. All this to say, with this petition and who to go for, it's so interesting because not like us, after this album drop, with Drake being like, hey, I need to find someone to sue. Not Like Us has not only reached the top 25 in Apple charts, top 20 in Apple charts, top 10 in Apple charts. It's, I believe, closing in on that, which is pretty hard for a song that didn't just drop. Imagine, it's like Mariah Carey defrosting all over again. That's exactly what it is. Now, I don't exactly know where it's at. Let me see currently where it is. Not Like Us charts. Let's see where this thing is at. It's on the charts. That was a few days ago. That was a month ago. A charts. Let's see what this has. I think Billboard was under this. So if this website doesn't work, we'll go to another one. So as of right now, I think it's currently at number 19 in the U.S. singles top 100. That's currently where it's at right now. Currently. So it's, surprisingly enough, this is really funny. It's number 19 in the U.S. It's number 29 in New Zealand's top 40. It's 29 in New Zealand's top 40, which is crazy. It entered at 6. It wasn't like the biggest song in the world. Like a bunch of these different countries, it did not hit number 1. So that's the historic performance. That's where it's currently at. Let's look at Billboard maybe. This might be an article though. Yeah, that's just an article. Let me see if I could go to charts here. Yeah, let's go to charts. I feel like Billboard would have a pretty good charts. Billboard Hot 100. Yeah, that's definitely where it's going to be at. Shabuzi, Die With a Smile, Birds of a Feather. Yeah, you got Sabrina Carpenter on there. You have Sticky, which is still performing really good. You have Mariah Carey, of course, a re-entry, because every single year... Where is the song? Did I pass it? Yeah, number 19 right now. Number 19 right now. So last week it was at number 16. Peak position was at, oh, excuse me, I'm on the wrong one. Yeah, so last week it was at 16. Peak position was at 1. Weeks on the chart was at 29. So yeah, as you could tell that this song has been... a pretty massive hit, if you ask me. It's been a pretty massive hit. It's a re-entry into the top 20, if that makes sense. That is nuts for a song about calling Drake a pedophile, pretty much. That's pretty nuts to say. And I'm not saying that's like inherently true. I don't know what Drake does in his own time, but what he said, what he talks about, how he carries himself, it's likely for many like myself to believe that maybe some of this is slightly true. He's obviously got gambling problems. Every single person knows about the Drake curse. Every single person knows about it. And so every single time that Drake wants to talk about who's going to win this, oh, the Drake curse strikes again. Mike Tyson, you couldn't pull it off. No. I thought Mike Tyson was going to win that fight. We talked about it last episode. Again, watch that episode if you guys haven't listened to it. It's a great episode. Talk about why Jake Paul and Mike Tyson should have never happened. It's a pretty controversial take, but it's what I truly believe in. So what I mean with this whole position and this whole petition is that, yeah, the exact same thing that Drake has probably done in ways of trying to play the system, gain as many Spotify streams as possible. Maybe that those songs that he has gets put on a few more playlists. That's very typical, because Spotify, they want, as much eyes, as many people on it as possible. They want the hits to be in the hits. They want the best songs in the world to be in every single playlist that is possible. It's very true. Because Spotify controls most of they control their playlist for sure. They don't control personal playlists, but the exact same way that Drake has kind of risen to the top and why he has so many of these hit songs and hit albums, because bloated. A lot of them are bloated. Everyone's going to take a listen to it because what about if that song's a banger? I don't know. I got to listen to it to find out. And there's enough people that care that he's going to constantly do it. And when those songs get enough streams, guess where they go? They go onto streaming platforms, playlists. They go into Spotify. They go into the top 10 Apple Musics. You know? It's pretty sad to see because, like I said, it kind of makes Drake look like a loser. And there's only one way of him winning it. Is that, yeah, Kendrick Lamar had maybe the team at UMG had done this maybe to defame Drake and to maybe make sure that he doesn't get as big of a contract as he desires. But still, there is the expense of the irreparable damage that song has done. Now, UMG has came out and said, like, this is just what people are playing. I'm sorry, Drake, but this is just what people are bumping with. You know how many people are in California compared to, like, in LA compared to Toronto? Yet alone Canada? I'm pretty sure the entirety of, like, what is it? California is, like, more populated than the entirety of Canada. Let's look up Canada, population. Let's find that out. So let's look up California population. Let's just find out. Population here. We have 38.97 million as of last year. Might be a little off. I feel like there's 50 million people in Canada. Let's find out here. Canada. Oh, Canada. Oh, wow. Would you look at that? 41 million. As of April 1st of this year. That's not much different. That's 3 million people. Say what you want. But probably most of the people in California that are bumping Kendrick, in a way, you could argue that they sweep the entirety of Canada. Is all of Canada rocking Drake? I don't know. Is all of California and the United States rocking Kendrick? Not necessarily. But the point still maybe stands in a way. It's kind of like it's kind of just saying this is more whatnot. So, again, the irreparable damage is still going to be shunned onto Drake. There's really no win-win for him. Yeah, maybe he can at least bring this to light and, you know, it kind of at least hurts Kendrick because then people are going to point it at Kendrick, right? And maybe with this lawsuit, you know, it prevents him from playing that song because it's in litigation. It's in a lawsuit. You can't play it. You can't perform it. But because maybe it's not true, because it's in a defamatory way and it goes to a court and, you know, an appellate court actually, you know, maybe takes it on. Well, sorry, you can't play it because it might be defamatory. But who's to say that Drake's songs weren't the exact same? He said that Dave Free, one of his managers, his longtime friends, is the baby daddy to his own kid. Is that true? We don't necessarily know. The kids don't necessarily look like Dave Free. They kind of look like Dave Free, but Dave Free also kind of looks like Kendrick. And so with that, it leads me to believe that there's not really a win-win for Drake in the situation. It's just trying to get the pendulum to move a little bit his way, to activate the audience that is. Most of the comments I've seen have been like, nah, man, we just like the song. You know, the song's just good. I'm sorry you released The Heart Part 6 and you got, I don't know how you listened to Mother Eye and said like, yeah, Kendra got molested. You're making fun of it? How are all these girls that love Drake because of all this raunchy kind of hard music that he plays? It completely wipes out a lot of the sexual assault that maybe a lot of, mostly women kind of, talk about. Me too, of course. Kendrick obviously has had his fair share of affairs, but he's owned up to them. He's learned from them and he's tried to move past them. He's sought a bigger origin to it. Drake's main audience, and not to say main audience, but definitely a lot of his songs, Rich Baby Daddy, there's a lot of songs that maybe kind of cater to the college to high school audience, and obviously those in their 20s. And you got a song about how his mother got molested wrong. It's not a great look. It's not a great look. And not to say that, like, by any means, any woman that has been, dealt through grief in, the ways that I've just mentioned, have to stop listening to them. It's their choice. They have their own choice to do it. But when you make fun of it in a way as somebody else's expense, it's not really that. It looks bad. It looks really, really bad. Like if I made fun of somebody that has died, to a drunk driver. They had a sibling that died to a drunk driver, and I use it as a rap beef. I'm like, yo, your brother died because somebody was a little bit, like, is it necessary? Like, does that necessarily diss me? Or are you just trying to pluck a heartstring and, like, make me infuriated? Just look, it shows more about me as a person than the incident of actually it being talked about. And Kendrick brings in a lot of these really, polarizing ideas of transgenderism in his own family. It's not typical for a lot of African Americans to transition, yet alone at that time. And it's so interesting of the way that he crafts it, right? And obviously talk about how his mother's grief as being molested as a child, how that has affected him and his family, and how it affects him as a person. And how these few years that he wasn't really creating music. He obviously did the Black Panther album, but the few years that he wasn't really dropping his own studio albums, how the things that have gone on, his affairs with Whitney and not being a, maybe holy man that he maybe so praises. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that maybe find dirt in these weird ways, but what ends up happening is when you say it, a cease and desist is for hoes, this petition is basically one of them. And it's not saying that this song can't exist, but with the allowing of UMG to promote the song and make the song happen, the exact same side of the coin that Kendrick played is the exact same side of the coin that A, got Drake famous, 2, Drake used in the rap beef. And so who's to say that Kendrick couldn't do the same? Who's to say? He's saying that he put hands on Whitney. Yeah, maybe parts of that's true from the album prior that he's talked about. That maybe he was an unfaithful man. Obviously kind of talking about how he's short, Whitney's taller than him. Is it self-defense because, she's bigger than you? It's inherently talking about that. It's inherently talking about physical altercations, domestic violence in a relationship setting. It's what it's talking about. It's inherently talking about that. Trying to strike a chord and it's probably a minor. Well, it's not necessarily talking about how you're a pedophile, but it's inherently talking about how you're a pedophile, right? And so all this to say, again, this is such a weird petition because it doesn't bode well for Drake. And yeah, maybe it's his only play. I think his only play was to shut up for like the next 7 months and just let everything die down. Not remind every single person every time you speak that you lost the rap beef, that you are somebody that really craves a younger soul. Somebody that goes out and parties with people who are very much younger age in a way that they probably shouldn't. And when you hop on a feature and talk about how you go to all these places, but not Turks and Caicos, it reminds people of the rap beef and the person that he is. And that when you hop on Wagwan Delilah because you think it's maybe a good song, it reminds everybody that, yeah, maybe there is a worse song than The Heart Part 6. And every single time that I'm so cheesed goes on, we're going to be reminded of The Heart Part 6. We're going to be reminded of Wagwan Delilah. It's grippy. You should have learned from J. Cole. You should have learned from J. Cole. J. Cole did the exact thing that you are now doing, but continuously doing. J. Cole did that, and now he's kind of pivoted. He's pivoted releasing old music, old songs that he had that just weren't on streaming services. That's what he did. He's releasing them now on streaming services. They don't just exist in the ether of time. They exist now on streaming services. You could actually like them, listen to them. It's a pivot. For Drake, he needs to not bet. He needs to not just go on these rants. He needs to not call these people drunk and being like, man, I really like you, dude. Because it's zesty. When you're with Sexy Red, you see yourselves as two bad bitches. That's exactly what's going on. And I'm not Drake. I'm not Kendrick Lamar, but I'm an outsider looking in. And if I were in those shoes, having to make a decision like that, you go ghost for the rest of the year. And yeah, maybe people are going to clown you because it's like, oh, you can't show your face in public. That's not the point. You make everyone forget. And then come back. Oh, there's Drake again. Oh, I haven't seen him since the rap beef. Instead of all these connecting points from one to another, just constantly reminding every single person about this rap beef. And there's no way out other than when Kendrick dropped his album to drop the petition. And it's not a lawsuit. It's a petition. So the courts release who the F is Drake going to sue. I want to bring up another battle that is going on. This week in college football, it was rivalry week. We had Michigan versus Ohio. We had NC State versus University of North Carolina. We had, who else played today? There was a bunch of teams. Let me look at who played today because there was a bunch of brawls today. There was a bunch of, what is it? Just fights. There was just so many fights. There were so many people, how do I say it? Just brawling after the game. Like all these games were relatively close and every single team, had their fair share celebrating. And man, rivalry week is different. I've been to high school. We have a rival because I went to East Valley High School. Our rival that is West Valley High School. Of course, we know rivalry at the college or at the high school level. When we get to college, I went to a community college, so I didn't necessarily live the atmosphere of going to a football game or doing this and doing that. But I have seen today the extent at which people are willing to go for the pride of their school. Today we had Michigan and Ohio State go at it. People got pepper sprayed because of how violent it was. You had South Carolina versus Clemson, which was a pretty good matchup. You had Tennessee versus Vanderbilt. No fight there. You had Notre Dame versus USC. There was definitely a fight there. Who else? You had Arizona State versus Arizona, of course. Those are always good ones. You had the Iron Bowl, Auburn versus Alabama, because they're both in Alabama. Texas versus Texas A&M. That's always a good one. UNLV versus Nevada, of course. And some of these teams even played earlier in the year, too. Like, we also had Georgia versus Georgia Tech. Also a great game. So I bring this up because there was a bunch of fights today. And throughout this entire season, there have been these two Goliaths, not football teams, but players that have kind of battled it out for the ultimate prize that is the Heisman Trophy. And to be a finalist is crazy. It seems like the finalists are going to be Cam Ward from Miami, Dylan Gabriel from Oregon, my Oregon Ducks, come on now. And then you have these two Goliaths in Travis Hunter from Colorado and Ashton Jeanty from Boise State. Now, I love me some Boise State because they're close. They're kind of like, they have a cool field too, but they're super close. Like, it's super awesome to have like some team so close have such success. Now, I want to talk about the Heisman Trophy Award. And I'm going to preface this first because the Heisman Trophy Award winners usually get sponsored and they usually have these Aflac commercials. They have these weird kind of like fun little things that kind of go along with college football. And they always get to go on these, what would you call it? They always get to go on these like commercials in a way. And there's always this legacy of it, and especially modern day, there's Baker Mayfield, there's Derrick Henry, there's Mark Ingram. There's a bunch of these Heisman Trophy winners in commercials. Robert Griffin III. I think solely because of that, because of the personalities that be, everything's always about marketability. It's not about who truly wins. It's about the marketability of people. I think that Travis Hunter will win the Heisman Award simply because of the marketability of him afterwards. To use him in commercials. He's a likable person. He streams. He has, he's got a YouTube channel. He's done content. They will pick him because of those qualities. And just because this race is close enough for a lot of people that are fans of football, it is not a close race. Ashton Jeanty from Boise, the running back from Boise. He's a running back. So Dylan Gabriel's a quarterback. Cam Ward's a quarterback. Quarterbacks usually win it, just like the MVP in the NFL. Ashton Jeanty, running back. Travis Hunter, wide receiver, cornerback. Not cornerback. So he plays wide receiver and the person that guards him as well. So he guards wide receiver and then also plays wide receiver. He's a cornerback and wide receiver. Running back Ashton Jeanty will win the Heisman Award. I truly believe that. I want him to win. He should win it, but he won't. Because of the marketability that is. That is the sole reason. In this world that we live in, we have sacrificed merit and talent for the marketability of players and athletes. The Chiefs are not a great team this year. They're lucky enough to squeeze a few wins, maybe against the Ravens. They've had a few good calls that maybe had gone their way without, this rigging that kind of goes on. The NFL finds a lot of success in showing Taylor Swift. I've been very vocal about my disdain for, how the NFL has gone this year. I don't care that Taylor Swift is in the crowd. I don't want to see 8 different posts from all these social media outlets about how Taylor Swift has entered into the building. I get it. That's going to happen. I get if somebody wins the World Series, I'm going to see 8 different Instagram accounts post the exact same thing, maybe slightly different. I get it. But winning the World Series is not the same as Taylor Swift walking into the Arrowhead. It's not the same thing. I think we're in this world, and I know I just kind of mentioned this with a lot of the rap stuff too, that we've kind of lost this true art form of just talent. We've lost this true art form of what it really means to just, find success. Success has been primarily manufactured in recent times. There's been this major shift in how we perceive things as likable. And I think a lot of this kind of went through high school. Like we had the fidget spinners, we had like Supreme and being a hype beast. A lot of people still collect shoes, of course, but what became like a hype beast and, having all these designer things like Supreme and Gucci and Prada became like the mainstay. And what happens is when things become a mainstay is that it kind of continues to be, but less of a light. The light, not necessarily say it's the main focal point, but people make that their livelihood. And especially with TikTok, people try to make all these people famous. And you always see the comments of like, we made the wrong person famous. There's a lot of people in this world, in the sports world particularly, GMs, owners, people that are higher ups in a franchise. They have to draft people that is the best person for their organization. Somebody that's maybe not too controversial on and off the court. Somebody that obviously plays well into their system. Somebody that also is maybe likable. Somebody that's also, I guess, again, I'm just going to kind of repeat words that I've already said. Marketability, really good on the court, maybe not so controversial on or off. Has a good height, has discipline. There's a lot of characteristics that would make a good draft pick. Somebody that you need for your team. Like if we already have 2 really good centers, why would we draft another? Is somebody on the way out? Are we preparing for the future? Those are decisions that you have to make. Like my Mavs, we have like basically 3 centers, maybe 4. Most of them kind of play power forward to center. PJ Washington, Maxi Kleber, Dwight Powell, Derek Lively II, Daniel Gafford. A lot of these people, there's 5 guys for 2 positions. How the heck does that work? And so what I mean by this is a lot of success for a lot of people is very manufactured. There's a lot of eyes, a lot of clicks. We live in this world where social media is so dominated that if you have success and your name gets out there, you will be successful. That is simply it. You may not be a good human. You may say some crazy stuff and have to apologize. You may have some tweets from 5-10 years ago that maybe is so different. But the exact same thing that brings you up and builds you up, your career, is the exact same thing that brings you down. And how this translates to college football and the NFL, and college football in particular, is that if you want to build the backbone of the Heisman Trophy winner, you have to build it on, stats and how they play positionally. Are they dominant in their field? Are they the exact person that would win the Heisman? If I wanted to give somebody an award for the Nobel Peace Prize in 1945, and I gave it to the Third Reich dictator, Adolf Hitler, would you not think that the merit behind the Nobel Peace Prize stands? Would you not say that, like, well, that lost a lot of its stuff? Like, that lost the entire meaning of what the award means. Like, it's an honor to win that. Well, not if that person wins it, not if Adolf Hitler wins it. The same thing has happened with the Grammys. We have sacrificed this traditional and really good music for, yeah, okay, Taylor Swift wins again. Beyonce wins this one. Drake wins that. And not to say that a lot of these are ill-deserved or undeserved wins in Grammy Awards, but when you know what good music is as a person and as a community and as a society that we live in, beyond the Grammys, when we know what good football play is, when we know what a true Heisman winner is, a deserving team like the Lions that have grinded, worked up from the muck, whereas the Chiefs, wow, plays should have been blown dead, except it was an illegal shift. Fumble goes to them. But no, it's an inverted whistle, though. I didn't make the rules. You made the rules. So follow the rules. We can't bend our perception to fit the outcome. You have to stay so sturdy in what you believe in your morality that, and yeah, you're going to slip up. There's going to be little mistakes as a human, right? If I didn't like doing games for, let's say it's, what is it? Let's say it's a ad for Temu. Temu's paying me $100,000 to make this ad. But that's $100,000. What is the price you're willing to pay for your own success? Are you going to be inauthentic? Are you not going to hold your word? Are you going to, again, bend your morality for the outcome? Bend the way that we see life for the outcome that we desire. This is why a lot of people find God, seek a higher being, follow something, give you guidance. And for myself, I've done a lot of soul searching in a way of trying to find what it means to live, what it means to be human. I was on a call recently and I just kind of said, I don't want to do gimmicks. I don't care if that gets you there faster. I don't want a cookie cutter way that gets me there faster. I know what works. I know how I will make it work. And I will trust my process in making that work. I'm not going to find a shortcut to get there. I will run the 26.2 miles and I will not cut across the street to -5 of those, to eliminate 5 of those. People see it. People know it. But guess what happens? We suddenly forget and we move on to the next thing. And the same thing's going to happen with this Heisman. Like I said, I think Travis Hunter wins it because of his markability. He's obviously on a great team. There's a lot of clicks when it comes to Colorado. Shadur Sanders, Deion Sanders, the Shiloh Sanders, obviously the other brother. There's this world that they live in that is very marketable. You have maybe the first Colorado. I don't know if it's the first Colorado athlete to win it, but that's a cool story. The first maybe two-way person to win it. That's a cool story. We live in a world of hot takes, clickbait, and untruths. And all this Venn diagram of things spew out into the world. And what I mean by that this is just going to blow over is I literally mean that, yeah, this all happens. The Chiefs win the Super Bowl again, and then next year it's the same thing again, just maybe a different way of doing it. And then we look back at the history and be like, wow, the Chiefs and Patrick Mahomes won a lot of games. Wow, he's really good. He's like the GOAT. But guess what happens? If people don't forget, people will keep egging it on. And keep reminding people that what you see is not always how we got there. And there's going to be kids one day that are like, wow, the Chiefs dynasty, they must have been really good. History surely repeats itself, but it can't rewrite itself. And there will be a generation out there one day that looks back at the Heisman Trophy of this year. There will be people that look at, wow, the first two-way player. I want to be a two-way player. Wow, the Chiefs, they must have been really good. They won a three-peat. Wow, they were really good. They were 15-1. There's going to be a world one day where that is true. There's going to be a lot of people looking back at that. One of the first franchises ever to three-peat. The Lakers did it, and the Chiefs might follow suit. We have sacrificed hard work. We have sacrificed people who, not take the high road. They take the shortcut. They take the short way to success and the top. And like I said with this Heisman, and why it's so important is that people hopefully won't forget the season that Ashton Jeanty has had. I truly believe he is the best player in football. When you are a running back, and not only that, you have one less person blocking because the quarterback's handing you the ball, and you have 11 people versus 9, and you're still able to have 7.5 yards per carry. You're still able to score and run for over 2,200 yards as of right now. I don't know how many touchdowns he's at, but over 25, maybe, I don't know, maybe over 20 at least. Versus somebody where we are comparing snaps. I don't mind snaps as a stat. But here's the thing. When people comment stats, snaps aren't a stat. Stop counting them. Guess what every media outlet that makes a graphic is going to put? Snaps, because they know that people are going to comment it. And they know that the gimmick that is will continue to comment it until it becomes their reality. And we've seen this change in politics. We've seen this change in our real life. And for a lot of us, we don't have the voice for change. We have to accept that the reality that is. And yeah, there's going to be a lot of people that are like, snaps are not a stat. I truly don't think it's a stat. Obviously, he's a two-way player. Cool. I understand why it is out there. But every single person that makes a graphic with snaps, every single person that tries to game the system, and yeah, it's not bad to game the system, but if you're doing it at the expense of like, oh yeah, that's going to get that reaction. Oh yeah, they're just going to comment, yeah, snaps aren't a stat. You have lost the spine that is. And again, people are going to complain. People are going to rinse and repeat. We may not be able to change the outcourse of history in this way because we don't truly control that. We can surely have influence on that, but we can't rewrite history. And if there's enough people that are going to continue to write snaps and there's going to be a continued way of thinking, the backbone that is purity, morality, and integrity will forever be lost. And I kind of say this for a few reasons because it's something that I've thought about for a really long time. It's something that I've observed for a really long time. I find that there is such a lack of a spine, especially in the NBA when they post like a travel. That's a travel. Why are you saying this is a highlight? It's not a highlight. It's a travel. Call it a travel. But they're just going to continue doing it. Because guess what? You can't stop them. Oh, that's a carry. Sorry. It's a highlight. If people replace what actually is with something else, that's a cookie. No, that's a brownie. Sorry. Gaslighting has been one of the biggest things that have came out, especially within the last 4-5 years. There's a lot of gaslighting, maybe more direct. This type of gaslighting is very indirect. There's going to be so many highlights out there that come from the NBA, and we're going to be like, oh man, that was this, that was this, that was this. But we're going to continue to replay it for year after year, year after year. Travel, not travel, carry, not travel. It doesn't matter what you think. It's what we think. It's what we post because we think it's a highlight. It gets clicks, gets people commenting on it, and it gets views. And so far, we live in that world where those metrics decide what is real and the reality that we live in. And I'm not a conspiracy theorist by any means, and you might say that I am, but it's just how I view the world in this way. The Heisman Trophy, again, will go to Travis Hunter because of the reasons that I've said prior. Ashton Jeanty is a well-deserved Heisman candidate, and he's a well-deserved Heisman winner. He should win it, but he won't, because we live in a world where the clicks, the views, and the comments dictate how history is taken, and unfortunately, we can't rewrite the history once it's been done. Nationers, thank you guys again so much for watching episode 68 of The Realest Podcast. I hope you guys had and enjoyed today's episode. This has been a fun one, by the way. Oh my goodness. How is it always an hour? I don't mean to talk for like an hour and a half, Nationers, but every single time I do. Thank you guys again so much for watching. I hope you guys did enjoy. Hit that subscribe button if you guys haven't already. Thank you to all the audio listeners. I hope you guys obviously enjoyed this episode. This one was something that I wanted to dive in a little bit deeper, and I hope you guys enjoyed maybe this philosophical approach to this episode. I find this to be really fun for me, and I hope it was for you as well. Thank you guys again so much for watching episode 68 of The Realest Podcast. Banner is right behind me. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. 07. Peace. Peace.